For decades, a highway cutting through the vast wilderness of British Columbia has served as the main overland link between the lower 48 states and the distant, rugged expanse of Alaska. This route, stretching for hundreds of miles, is not just a strip of pavement. It's a lifeline that connects communities separated by thousands of miles of forests, mountains, and untamed land. It's more than a road. It's a vital economic artery, moving goods, services, and people to remote Alaskan communities that would otherwise be isolated for much of the year. Every day, long-haul trucks brave challenging weather and difficult terrain to haul groceries, building materials, fuel, and other essentials, keeping Alaska supplied and connected to the rest of North America. Without this steady flow, store shelves would quickly empty, and construction would grind to a halt. For many American companies, this Canadian route is the only practical and reliable way to reach Alaska by land, making it indispensable for trade and logistics. Families, workers, and tourists also rely on these highways, turning the journey into a symbol of U.S. Canada cooperation and friendship, as people cross borders for work, adventure, and to visit loved ones. But now, this crucial passage is at the center of a growing international trade dispute, raising questions about the future of cross-border travel and commerce. British Columbia, under pressure from new U.S. economic policies and shifting trade dynamics, is considering imposing significant tolls on American trucks using its roads to reach Alaska, a move that could have far-reaching consequences. The proposal has sparked concern and uncertainty on both sides of the border, threatening to turn what was once a straightforward drive into a costly and complicated ordeal for everyone who depends on this vital route. In response to aggressive U.S. trade tactics, British Columbia has introduced a bill to impose tolls on U.S. commercial trucks traveling to and from Alaska. Premier David Eby calls it a defensive measure, ready to counter new American tariffs, especially those pushed by Donald Trump. The law would let the province act quickly, targeting U.S. trucks if tariffs hit Canadian goods. The message: if the U.S. inflicts economic pain, BC is prepared to respond in kind. The Economic Stabilization, Tariff Response Act, is a clear warning. BC won't passively accept policies that hurt its economy. The hope is that this bold move will force the U.S. back to the negotiating table, not escalate the conflict. British Columbia's main goal is to protect its economy and jobs from U.S. tariffs, especially those targeting steel, aluminum, and lumber. The tolls are a direct response to what BC leaders call unfair trade practices designed to weaken Canadian industries. Canadian officials argue they can't just absorb these economic blows, they need leverage. The tolls are a bargaining chip, showing Canada won't be intimidated and is ready to defend its interests. Premier Eby and federal leaders present a united front, determined to stand up to U.S. pressure. The ideal outcome: removal of U.S. tariffs and a return to stable trade. Until then, the toll law is a powerful tool in Canada's negotiating arsenal. The proposed law grants British Columbia sweeping new authority, allowing the province to impose tolls on cross-border traffic with remarkable speed and efficiency, all without the need to pass fresh legislation each time a new trade threat emerges. This power would be triggered specifically if the United States decides to enact tariffs targeting Canadian goods or services. The tolls would be strategically focused on key transportation routes, such as the vital Highway 97 corridor, which is heavily used by American trucks transporting goods to and from Alaska, making it a critical supply line. The intent behind the law is to strike directly at U.S. supply chains, creating significant economic pressure while carefully minimizing disruption for Canadian drivers and other non-commercial traffic, ensuring local communities aren't unduly affected. Importantly, this legislative act is designed as a temporary measure, with a clear expiration date set for May 2027, after which the tolls would automatically end unless renewed. This signals to both the public and international partners that it's an emergency response, not a permanent change in policy. This built-in flexibility means BC can react quickly and decisively to any sudden U.S. trade actions, matching the pace and unpredictability of American policy shifts and ensuring Canada isn't left behind in a fast-moving trade dispute. The hope is that the mere threat of imposing these tolls will be enough to deter the U.S. from introducing new tariffs, helping to preserve economic stability and good relations. If the tolls are activated, their rates and coverage could be adjusted in real time, making them a highly targeted and adaptable economic tool capable of responding to changing circumstances. Ultimately, BC's goal is to resolve the dispute swiftly and diplomatically, avoiding the creation of long-term barriers and keeping the border open for future cooperation. If BC activates tolls, Alaska would feel the impact immediately. Most goods for Alaskan stores arrive by truck through Canada. Tolls would raise costs on everything from groceries to building supplies. Trucking companies would pass these costs to Alaskan consumers and businesses, squeezing budgets and raising prices. The construction industry and small businesses would be hit especially hard, potentially slowing economic activity. The tolls would also disrupt a supply route Alaskans have relied on for decades, forcing some to seek slower or more expensive alternatives. For Alaskans, a political fight far away could mean higher daily expenses and new economic uncertainty. The situation highlights how deeply connected North American economies are, and how quickly local actions can have far-reaching effects. The U.S. response was immediate and forceful. Donald Trump, along with his closest allies, wasted no time in threatening to retaliate against Canada. Their focus quickly shifted to Canada's lucrative tourism industry, a sector that brings in billions each year and supports thousands of jobs across the country. Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan took the lead, suggesting that the U.S. could block American cruise ships from stopping in Canadian ports. Such a move would be devastating for British Columbia's economy, which relies heavily on the steady flow of cruise ship passengers and the business they bring. Most Alaska-bound cruises are required by U.S. maritime law to make a stop in a foreign port, usually in Canada. Without these stops, cruise lines would be forced to cancel or reroute their trips, making this threat extremely serious for both countries' tourism sectors. What began as a dispute over trucking regulations is now rapidly expanding, pulling in tourism and other vital industries. The conflict is no longer limited to the highways. It's reaching the ports, the borders, and the heart of cross-border commerce. Each new threat seems to provoke another, creating a dangerous cycle where economic pain could spiral out of control for both nations. The tit-for-tat escalation risks long-term damage that could take years to repair. An attack on Canada's cruise industry would not only hurt British Columbia, but would also disrupt American tourism, cruise lines, and the many U.S. workers who depend on this cross-border business. Trump's aggressive stance and willingness to escalate the conflict raised the stakes dramatically, making a damaging trade war between the two close allies more likely than ever before. As the rhetoric intensifies, both nations find themselves on a dangerous collision course, where economic logic could easily be overshadowed by political pride and the desire to appear tough on the world stage. Despite the threats, there's still a chance for a peaceful resolution. BC's toll law is only a precaution. It hasn't been passed or enacted yet. Provincial leaders say they prefer open trade. The tolls are a last resort. The legislative delay gives time for U.S. and Canadian leaders to negotiate and de-escalate. The law's temporary nature signals a desire for resolution, not permanent conflict. The next few months are critical. Leaders can choose confrontation or dialogue. The clock is ticking. Will this be a turning point for U.S.-Canada relations or the start of a costly trade war?